we're going to have a conversation about community, and I thought it'd be cool just to hear from a fellow young adult about how community has impacted them. And so they're going to be led by our young adult minister in Rome, Daniel. And they're going to introduce themselves, but they're awesome. I've had an opportunity to know each and every one of them, and I just want to tell you guys in front of them that they're absolutely amazing. They blow me away every single time I sit down with them. I love what God is doing in and through them. And when I was praying on who to ask, these are the guys that kind of popped up into my heart, into my mind. And so thank you guys for being here. Daniel, thank you for leading them, and I'll shut up, and then you guys can do it. Cool?
Appreciate it. Well, like I said, my name's Daniel, and I'm our young adults minister in Rome. And so tonight, when we were getting ready for Friendsgiving, we just thought, like, instead of a normal message, like, let's have a discussion about community and what that looks like. Because our hope through Friendsgiving, like, right, we're about to share a meal together, hang out, have fun, is that you can lean into community and find good biblical community through what God's doing in our young adults ministry. And so we got an amazing crew that's ready to share their experience of how God has moved through their community. So tonight is all centered around Acts 2:42. Like, we see the early church form and really set the model of what good community looks like. And so we just want to encourage you with that, like, lean in, listen, and really dive into community. So to start us off, I want to ask our amazing friends to introduce yourself and then just share how community within our young adults has impacted you in your walk with Jesus. So we'll just start and go down the line, and yeah.
My name is Ansley.
I think it's on.
Is it on?
Flip
I think they control it maybe right there.
Your mic isn't on.
Sorry. I'm off to a good start. My name is Ansley. I'm 24, and I lead a young adult women's group in Rome. So if you live in Rome, we would love to have you. But you asked how community has impacted us personally.
Yes.
So I've seen what in Acts 2, verses 42 through 47, I've literally seen that lived out, and I've seen it through community. So I've witnessed young adults support other young adults financially, emotionally, and spiritually. We gather each week in homes, and we sit together, or during the week, and then we sit together at church on Sunday. I've seen life transformation through accountability and discipleship that has taken place. People give up things because they want to now follow Jesus with everything they have. And so that's been gorgeous to watch. And day by day, I've watched the Lord add to our numbers those who are being saved. And so that's been really impactful.
Yeah. I've had an incredible opportunity to be part of Ainsley's group, and so like just to see the way God has used her to lead. So can you share like an example of like how you've seen God like use your group to provide financially, like just some examples of how you've seen that play out?
Yeah, so an example that comes to my mind, I love this memory. There was one week in group where we were talking about how we wanted to go out and live missionally during the week. And so the next week we came back for group, and somebody in our group said, hey, this past week, it was pouring down rain. I was at a gas station, and I gave a homeless person my rain jacket. And he was just sharing how excited he was that he got to live missionally. Well, after group that night, somebody else from group texted me and said, hey, I want to do this anonymously. Please don't tell them this was me, but I'm going to send you money to send to them to get them a new rain jacket. So it was just gorgeous to see, and I've seen with mission trips, people say, hey, I want to give towards their trip. So like in Acts 2, you see the church taking care of the church.
Yeah, so cool. Especially like you see their model, like they were selling stuff to provide for those in need. So it's just cool to see how your group has done that for community, but then they step up and then like return the favor to each other. So that's cool. That's great.
Well, my name is Gabe, and I lead, me and Jonathan and Mr. Scott lead a group on Lake Altoona. So if you like water and Jesus, come join us.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. If you would have told me, though, 2 years ago that I would be leading a group, I'd have called you a liar and said you don't know Jesus. Because whenever I came here, I didn't even know what being in a group was. I grew up in a small church where community really wasn't an option because everybody looked good and acted right, and if you didn't or they even thought about confessing sin to anyone, it would become church gossip, or it would, sometimes even be spouted off from the pulpit. So my whole life was just personal sin management, trying really hard, just white knuckling it for as long as I could until I got too tired and eventually just fall headlong into sin. And but 2 years ago, I got invited to a group, and what happened there was kind of terrifying and beautiful at the same time. You saw people that were really living out what the Galatians 6 would say, restoring people in a spirit of gentleness, where they would, bear one another's burdens, and they would not judge them, but at the same time not condone them and pick them up and help them walk. So after that, we started a group called the Boat Boys, and
Sounds so fun.
and after that, we just have we've got people to lean on now.
Man, that's cool.
So I'm Harley, and I started coming to Crosspoint about 3 years ago and started serving shortly after. But I found myself in this weird spot of I was super involved in the church and in serving and the life of the church, but I didn't feel connected to anyone in the church or anything in the church. So about a year and a half ago or so, I got invited to go out to eat lunch with Lauren. She's somewhere in here. But she invited me to a young adult gathering, and from then on, it just felt like immediately everything clicked and fell into place. And I don't even know if I've missed a young adult event since then.
Come on.
But,
Perfect attendance.
But yeah, before that, I could feel the lack of love in my life, just because going to church and just going home right after was not cutting it for me. So it was really cool, the friends that I gained through young adults. Not only were they my friends when I came to church, but they were also the people that I wanted to be with outside of church. So that brought accountability, which was also a new thing for me. So, yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, my name is Jonathan. I'm from Michigan originally, so when I came here, I didn't know anybody in Cartersville, let alone Crosspoint. I found Crosspoint through TikTok, actually, scrolling during the pandemic, and decided to come check it out that following Sunday. And from the moment that I walked in these doors, the church just embraced me. They made me feel like I was at home. And so going from a place to where I had been here at that point for like 6 years, didn't have a church home, didn't have a place to call home, it really made a difference to me to have people here that genuinely cared for me. So I was introduced to Carlos. He introduced me to the men's small group. And so from there, I met all the guys here, or the majority of the guys here. And I remember at the end of that initial meeting, one of the guys came up to me and he said, hey, let's swap information. Let's go out for coffee. Let's go out for lunch and just, get to know each other. And so initially I'm thinking like, I don't have anything in common with this guy. Like, what are we going to talk about? But from the moment we sat down, it was like we had known each other forever. So I'm very grateful for the intentionality of the people here. And I would just encourage everybody here just to be intentional with your friendships and your relationships here.
Yeah. Well, that's so good. So we get to hear all of their experience, how they got plugged in. What I love is it started with an invite, right? And so because somebody reached out to them, they are now in community and living, surrounded by people who are encouraging them. So when you think about that and what it's been meant to y'all, Gabe and Harley, can y'all just kind of touch on why community is important and why we can't just isolate ourselves from other people?
I think that community really isn't optional if we look in Galatians 6, James 5, or the fact that God has existed eternally in community. But I think probably the best picture to me is in Romans 12, it talks about us being the body of Christ. And my thought of it was if we're all the body of Christ, and maybe your community's the hand, and maybe you're the thumb. And I'll tell you, a hand without a thumb is not very useful. I mean, you can pick up stuff without your thumb, but it's not very effective. But if I was to cut your thumb off and throw it in the corner, is it going to be very effective? A thumb can do nothing by itself.
That's good.
Everybody in this room is thumb buddy.
Love it. That's the quote of the night.
Everybody, yeah. Everyone in this room is thumb buddy.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you cannot be who God called you to be apart from the hand. But the hand can't be all that God has called it to be without the thumb.
That's good, man. That's a good word.
I'd say for me, kind of going back to my answer for the first question, accountability was a new thing for me. So when I was living a life not surrounded by godly people or godly community, I found myself living however I wanted to live because no one that I associated with really cared what I did or how I lived. So when I was living a life not in line with God, I struggled with a ton of things: depression, social anxiety, comparison, all of these things that just led me further and further away from community. So coming young adults, I found those friends, but I also found accountability partners that would lead me to a life without those things and help get me out of the cycles that I was in. And I just think that's what God wants for all of us that are here. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Like, we're created to be in community because the God that we serve, the God that we follow, lives in perfect community. And so, man, I'm stuck. We're all thumb body. I love that. So like, community is important, right? Like, we need each other. We need to lean on people that can lift us up whenever we're struggling or celebrate the good things in life. And so when you think about that, what are some challenges that make finding community difficult? Like, what are those challenges that we could see today? Ainsley and Jonathan, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so a big challenge that I see getting in the way of community is anxiety. For people who don't deal with anxiety, you may think, oh, it's not a real thing, but it really is a thing, and I think our generation can become gripped by it. And there's a girl in our group, actually, she shares now that she remembers her first Sunday coming to church, and she's just sitting in the parking lot terrified to go in. That anxiety was gripping her. Now she went in, and she's now a leader within our group. And so if you can just take that next step, even though it's scary, go anyways. Me and Bella actually were on the phone the other day talking about just conversations we've had with different people who do deal with that fear that's trying to keep them in isolation. And we said we believe that it is a ploy of the enemy to keep us alone and keep us isolated. And we just made a commitment to each other. May we be people who combat that and invite people to coffee and encourage them to come to group, even when it's scary and even when it's hard, because it is a gift on the other side of that fear.
That's so good.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said. Also, I would say social media, the political climate, the world today, all those things that can be so divisive can make it hard to find that good community. But I think that the way that we combat that is with communication and intentionality. So with me, I grew up very introverted. I kept my social group small. I played the background. But it wasn't until I came here that I really had to step out on faith and be intentional when I walked through these doors. And I had to realize that, intentionality is also a two-way street. So the same way that I came here and I was intentional, I needed the church to be intentional with me and to meet me halfway. So I would encourage everybody here tonight that if you're new, thank you for coming and being bold to take those steps, but also everybody in the room, be intentional and find those new faces and introduce yourself, invite them out for coffee, invite them out for lunch, be intentional, communicate with them, engage in conversation. Join a group and give the group a chance, go to multiple meetings. Don't just come one time and say, it's not for me. Come multiple times, come to multiple young adult gatherings, because I promise you, if you're intentional, God will be intentional with you.
Man, that's so good. And Jonathan, you mentioned something that I think we can really dive into. Like, when you think about like social media and like just the world we live in, like there's a lot of things that could like lead to us not wanting to jump into community because maybe we don't have the same views or the same things in common. So can you and Harley just kind of touch on, like, do we have to have things in common with people in order to be in community?
I would say no. A lot of the friendships that I've made here have been with people who I didn't have anything in common with initially. But that's what's made those friendships unique, is that our differences make us want to know more about each other. So again, going back to the guy that I met who invited me out for coffee, initially I'm like, I'm from Michigan, I'm from a farm, I grew up on a farm. This guy's from New York City. So, what do we have in common, But as soon as we sat down, like I said, it was like we had known each other forever, and it was our differences that made our conversation very unique and very interesting. Ultimately, we did have things in common, and us being believers is kind of what stitched us together. But just don't let outward appearances or, preconceived notions stop you from looking for that community, looking for those friendships, because I promise you, it is out there.
That's good.
I'd say no, we don't have to have things in common to be in community with each other. But that was a hard thing for me to realize for a long time. I think number one, it just shows us being in community all with each other. It just shows how much time God put into making each of us unique from each other. And it also just is a great representation of exactly what heaven's going to be. We all look different. We all do different things. We are interested in different things. But that's what heaven's going to be like. Yeah. And I have a cool story, actually. So Jazzy, a lot of you know Jazzy. She loves to meet all the new people. But we've known each other for about 8 years. But it wasn't up until about a year and a half ago that we actually became friends, because 8 years ago, we didn't know Jesus, and we were very different. I'm not going to say we didn't like each other, but it was kind of unsaid that we weren't going to be friends. We hung out with different crowds, had different interests, all of the things, but it wasn't until we both came to know Jesus that he united us, and now she's one of my best friends. And I just think that's a really cool example of it's solely based on what Jesus done that we are able to be in community and gather and commune with each other this tonight. So yeah.
I love that, especially because if you're like me and you're an introvert, it's hard to dive into a friendship or to meet people. But especially if it's I don't know if I'm gonna have anything to talk with them. But it's cool because those differences can spark about some good conversation. We don't have to have the same things in common, because we can show hey, this is what I like, share what they like. So it's just cool. You could still have that relationship, because the thing is we're united in Christ, and when we recognize that, community can go beyond what we can imagine. And so when you think about that, what advice tonight would you give for somebody who's an introvert that's hey, community is hard for me, or somebody that's an extrovert and it's man, I can meet anybody and be friends with anybody? What advice would you give to them on being in community? What are 2 practical ways we can do that tonight and going forward?
Okay, so my mic.
See if the switch got flipped.
Switch?
Other one on the back.
What?
Let me see it.
Okay, cool. It doesn't like me. Okay, so the question is, what advice do I have to extroverts and introverts? Okay, so if you're an extrovert and you have the superpower of being able to talk to anybody and making them feel seen and welcomed and cared for, do it. Us as extroverts, we can sometimes get in our own heads too about, is it going to be awkward? What is this? It might be awkward for 2 seconds. Do it anyways. Invite people into your circle. That's a beautiful thing to do. And then for the introvert in the room, I would just encourage you, you might think you don't need community, but you do. When the hard times do come, you're going to want people in your corner. And it's not if hard times come, it's when they will come. And you're going to wish that you had gotten rooted in community to have people come alongside you.
Yeah. And that's so good. Just to encourage y'all and what she's saying, but also to encourage her, me and my wife, we're super introverted. We have a close circle. We are not one that's going to just go meet everybody. And so when we moved here, we were praying through community, and we didn't know what that was going to look like, and we weren't actively searching for it. But Ainsley was one of those intentional people that invited my wife Kirsten out to coffee and said, hey, let's just get together, hang out. And because of that, she comes home and I'm oh, she just made a friend. She's hey, I don't know if you know this, but we're going to group on Wednesday night, so be ready. And I was oh. Which she grew up around here, so she knows everybody. I'm from Louisiana, so I didn't know everybody. But because Ainsley reached out to her, we dove into that community and found some really good friends. And even through that, because Ainsley met with her, my wife applied for the internship here at Crosspoint, and now she's on staff leading our community engagement. And then even with me, that being in that community, really diving into Crosspoint, I was able to join the staff because of it. So because of her being intentional about reaching out to us, we are here because of that. So we're super grateful. So for the extroverts, don't be afraid, reach out. And then the introverts, dive in, because you won't regret finding community. So yeah.
I'm going to start with my 2 practical things. So I'd say my 2 practical tips would be in a group, and if your schedule allows, come Thursday nights, all the young adults sit together. It's a great chance to make community, and I think those are a great place to start, but they're a terrible place to stop.
Yeah.
Grab coffee, go to dinner, just get to know some people here. outside of church. Find out who they are, where they from, you know. But on the topic with introverts and extroverts, I'm an extroverted introvert. And to put that into kind of terms for you, I only have so many words I can use during the day, and once I've run out of all those words, you know, I'm done. If you don't believe me, just ask Sweet Pea. She'll tell you all about it. But to the extroverts in the room, you're going to love this process of getting to know people, but don't ditch your community when it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and your community finds out you're not as cool as you put on Facebook.
That's real.
And that's really just the time to press in. Whenever it gets real and you really feel like running, that's the time you need to press in,
That's so good.
hunker down, and just keep going. And to the introvert in the room, I'm not going to lie to you and say that you're really going to enjoy this in the beginning, but it's totally worth it. You know, eventually you're going to find these people like family. They're already your brothers and sisters in Christ. It's time for you to get to know them. So I know it's not going to be easy, but it's totally worth it. But for both groups, God is going to use this process to stretch you.
Yeah.
Stretching is uncomfortable, but it makes us into who He's called us to be.
That's good. And hey, before you pass the mic, where do y'all sit on Thursday nights? Like, if they've never been in, like when they walk in, where's that young adult crew sit?
Generally in the middle up front.
Front, middle. So Thursday nights, come to our 7 o'clock gathering, front, middle, you'll find Gabe.
My turn? Yeah. Okay. I would say my advice is more for the introverts in the room, but I would say don't feel pressured to like perform for people. I know I'm up in front of a lot of people all the time, and it gets really hard to feel like I have to like act a certain way or be a certain way in order for people to like me and want to get to know me. So I would just say 2 ways to do that tonight here in this room is if you're an introvert and you get uncomfortable around new groups of people like I do, just tonight is a perfect opportunity to just get out of your seat and go sit somewhere new. Go sit with people you don't know. And when you go sit with them, talk to them about things that you like. And I don't mean pretend to be interested in the same things that they're interested in, because I'm guilty of that, and I know we're all guilty of that. But just seriously, tell them what you like, tell them why you like it, and also listen to them in return about what they like and why they like it. So, yeah.
That's good.
I would say, again, just be intentional. You know, the Jonathan from 2 years ago would never be doing something like this, not speaking out in public. But now you'll see me every now and then on a young adult reel, just cringing watching myself on screen.
Great.
But I appreciate it because it's people like Parker, Dawson, Carlos who have stretched me in that way outside of my comfort zone to say, like, don't take yourself so seriously. You know, just have some fun, and it's all for His glory at the end of the day. So be intentional.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, can we give it up for this amazing panel? It takes a lot to get up here and share your experience, but I want to encourage y'all as Carlos comes up here and explains what we're going to do next, but lean into tonight. Put your phones away, eliminate the distractions, and lean in, because you never know. The person that's sitting across from you that you may not know right now might be somebody that's going to walk with you in the trenches of some of the toughest things in your life. And so be present, be intentional, and lean in, because this is a exact reason why we want to do this. So.
Hey, give them a round of applause real quick one more time. Hey, great job, great job, great job.